Hello everyone, welcome to another Flesh and Blood video. This week starts the reviews for the brand new heroes out of the brand new set, Bright Lights. Although I really shouldn't say for the brand new set since it's been out for around a month now? None of the heroes from the new set has really made much of a splash in competitive play. The most seeing play is probably the one we're going to be talking about today, Max the Hype Nitro, but none of them are particularly amazing. The original Dash has been seeing a lot more success than the new one, and I don't think anyone has really cracked the code on Teclovecin. I think the main problem with them is that Lexi is still the most dominant deck, and these new mechanologists can't compete with the other decks trying to take that top spot in Bravo, Dromite, Icelander, and Phi. None of the aggro lists I've seen can outcompete what Phi is trying to do, and especially what Lexi's trying to do. And the slower lists can't outpace the disruption and the defense that decks like Bravo and Dromai can do themselves. So, it's up to the brewers, the people that are trying to build these new heroes, kind of like this, to try and build a deck that can sort of break that. I don't think that these new heroes are better than what we currently have, but I do think that once Lexi goes away, some of these heroes have a shot. And one of the ones that I think definitely does is Max the Hype Nitro. Let's get started. Max the Hype Nitro is a 4 intellect, 40 health mechanologist hero. He has the abilities, once per turn action, pay 2 resource, create a hyperdriver token with 2 steam counters on it. Activate this ability only if you've boosted this turn. Then his second ability says hyperdrivers you control get Crank. Crank is a brand new mechanic that pretty much says when an arena enters play, you can remove a steam counter from it to gain an action point, having them have less uptime and giving you an extra action point, pretty much giving the item go again. Max gets to generate an excessive amount of resources, especially with his generation of hyperdrivers each turn, and his utility by giving hyperdrivers Crank, and with his main weapon that we'll be talking about next, allows him to keep items with Crank in play for longer, which is extremely good with one of the items in the deck, and even hyperdrivers themselves, since that's another turn the item can stay in play. Max's main weapon, and the weapon we'll be playing for this deck, is Banksy. Banksy is a 3 power mechanologist wrench. It is 2-handed. It is a max specialization, meaning it can only be played if your hero is Max Nitro or Max the Hype Nitro, or I suppose even Shiana, since this is a specialization, although I don't think she'll get much use out of it. Banksy has 2 effects. It has a once per turn action to pay a resource and attack with it, but only if you've cranked this turn. And when it hits a hero, you put a steam counter on an item you control with Crank. So pretty much the game plan wants to be do whatever your turn is, make a hyperdriver off Max, crank it, and then come in with the Banksy. The problem with Banksy is that it is a very exact number. It's 3 damage. If Banksy was free and only had 2 power, yes, it would be easier to block, but it would be a more incoming threat since you wouldn't want to waste a 3 block on it, and if they do waste a 3 block on it, hey, that's good for you. Or if it was 2 for 4, it would always be a break point, making your opponent always spend a card plus to try and stop you from getting the steam counter. One of the equipment we play in this deck helps us come in for that 4, that stronger break point, but sadly it is only once a game, so we can't always force that break point. Although we do have items that really want to keep a steam counter on them, so that break point will definitely be useful. Next up is our headpiece. This is a brand new headpiece from Bright Lights called Hyper X3. It has one block and battle worn, letting it stay in play even after we block with it. And it has the other effects of when you banish a hyperdriver from boosting, put it under this, and once per turn, when a hyperdriver is put under this, and there are 3 or more hyperdrivers under this, draw a card. Hyper X3 is a really good tool that can have high amounts of cards under it. Mainly will be for our Nitro Mechanoid. Sorry about that one. Our Nitro Mechanoid. But if we do get to the point in the game where we have hit a ton of drivers, and that is definitely possible, we can smother our opponents in card advantage, making this pretty much into a super mask of momentum. The chess piece is one that just got reprinted, the Teklo Foundry Heart. I don't need to talk much about this one, but I will still read it. Once per turn action, pay a resource, banish the top 2 cards of your deck, gain 1 resource for each Mechanologist card banished this way, activate this ability only if you've boosted this turn, go again, and then it has 2 block and battle worn. The perfect equipment to play in Max, since for that 1 resource we can get the 2 to activate our hero, as well as Mechanologist heroes and cards do end up costing a lot of resources to use, so getting that extra resource every turn is pretty good. For our arms, we're playing the Cogrex base arms. The reason for these is because they help us get our Banksy breakpoint. They enter with the Steam counter, and if we've boosted this turn, we can pay a resource and remove it to give our next Mechanologist attack +1 power. This is any Mechanologist attack. We don't really have many other ways that we can boost the Banksy, which is why this item is here. It helps us get that one-time 4-power Banksy breakpoint to help give us a Steam counter on one of our other items. Other than that, that's really all this is for. This list doesn't play an ARM Evo that we can put over it. And when we do go for our Mechanoid plan, we do cut these for a different arm piece. And then finally, the main shoes are the Achilles accelerators. We don't have the Cogrex legs for the main board because I really only want to play those when we are going for the Mechanoid plan, so we can still use these for the extra action point. But these give us an extra action point if we've boosted. We can destroy them to get the action point. They also have Arcane Barrier 1, which helps us in our arcane damage matchups. Really strong, helps us go for super big turns, especially with a bunch of items in our deck. We can play an item, break it, and then break the Achilles accelerators, and then swing with another attack. You can't do it with Banksy because we didn't crank that item, but still really strong. And as I said, these will get swapped out for a different shoe when we want to go into our Mechanoid, which we might as well look at those equipment now. The Visitronic Model I is the headpiece we'll be bringing in when we play against more arcane damage decks, mainly the Wizards. It's really here just for the Arcane Barrier 2, not so much because of the main effect, because it is not a very good main effect, to be completely honest. The Galvanic Benders will come in when we want to go on our Mechanoid plan, so we can get our Mechanoid +1 power. And the Cogrex base legs for a similar reason, even though these do cost 1 for the Achilles effect of gaining an extra action point, they stay in play, allowing us to still use this and then play a Mechanoid. Next, we'll be taking a look at the main board, starting with our items. This deck only plays itself 9 different items. Well, I guess 3 different items. Well, 2 different items, but 9 items. 6 of them are hyperdrivers, 3 red and 3 yellow. This is the main card that Max wants to be generating with his ability. He pretty much makes a yellow one since it enters with 2 steam counters. But these are mainly here just because they're a hyperdriver we can play out. They're needed for our mechanoid sideboard plan, as well as we need to banish them with our Hyper X3. The other item in the deck, and I would say one of the best items in the game, Penetration Script. This is a 1-cost yellow item with Crank. It enters with a singular steam counter, and at the start of your turn, you destroy it unless you remove the steam counter. And it gives your Mechanologist attack actions +1 power. This is the main thing we want to be putting a counter on with Banksy. Even though it doesn't pump up our Banksy to make it a breakpoint, if we can get that counter from the Banksy onto the penetration script, we can lay into our opponent with turn after turn of increased power. One of the best cards in our deck. A way we can help cheat in some of these items is the card MetX. We're not playing the 0-cost version since it is not a breakpoint. This deck, I really wanted to make sure we could get in damage. The problem with Mechanologists right now, mainly these newer ones, is, well, 2 reasons. One, they don't get the easy access to a Teklo Plasma Pistol booster item like the original Dash does. So they have to rely more on this boost plan, especially Max, who's all about boosting. So we need cards that can take multiple cards out of our opponent's hand to deny a hit effect or damage, or we really just fall flat. MetX is a 1-for-4 that if it hits, lets us put an item into play of cost 0 or 1 from our hand, and of course it has boost. This lets us put in a hyperdriver or a penetration script, mainly going to be the penetration script, but drivers are also okay. This is the only effect like this in the deck. Like I said, the 0-cost one isn't a breakpoint, so it doesn't really help us there, since we definitely will have enough resources to actually pay for our whole turn, considering we are on max and we are playing 18 blues. Some of the other item helpers in the deck are one of our non-attack actions, Recharge. Recharge is a 1-cost, we're only playing the red, so at red it's 1 cost, 2 block, gives our next attack we boost +4. Every attack in the deck except one has boost, and we also put a steam counter on hyperdriver we control. So if you think about it, this is pretty much a free +4, since we're paying 1 for it, but we're putting a counter on a driver, which gives us 1 resource for each counter on it. So a really strong tool that this deck gets as just an extra breakpoint. And then the last non-attack action we actually are playing is High Octane. This is a card I thought was good enough to mainboard even when we're not on the Mechanoid plan, which is why it's here. This is a 1-cost 3-block action at red that gives us an action point whenever we boost, and it also lets us draw a card when we play it. So if we ever just have an extra resource at the start of our turn, we can replace this. We can replace the 1 resource and this High Octane with a new card that maybe we might be able to attack with. We don't have the Teklo Plasma Pistol to sort of use all of the action points, but if we do use something like a Twin Drive that can boost twice, we can get enough action points to still maybe come in with a MetX and like a Throttle and not have to boost them to keep our turn going. Looking at some of the other attacks in our deck, they're pretty much all boost. Pulse Wave Harpoon is a boost synergy that pretty much makes our opponent block with a card from their hand. T-Bone makes our opponent use an equipment. We're playing the red and blue. We're not really trying to ever play the blue out, but it's still a playable card, especially with Magnetic Shockwave, a card way down here. This one doesn't have boost, but for each time we boosted, our opponent has to use equipment to block it. Pretty much ways to get things like a New Horizons or other battle-worn / temper equipment from our opponent's equipment slots. Things like Flame Scale Furnace, things like Skullbone Cross Wrap, things like that. We have throttles just because it's a 2 for 6, only the red one. That's perfectly fine. Twin Drive is here because it's a double boost. This is good for things like High Octane if we're on a Mechanoid sideboard plan, or it does count as 2 boosts for maximum velocity. So we can come in with a Twin Drive, some other boost card, and then play the max velocity off only 2 other attacks. 3 red and 3 blue, 0 to 60. The red because it's a breakpoint. The blue because it's just a 2 damage for 0 blue. It's not terrible. All 9 zipper hit because the red and yellow are breakpoints, with the blue being just a good blue. The last 2 boost cards in our deck, 3 blue Big Bertha and 3 blue Crankshaft, because when they're boosted, they let us put a steam counter on a hyperdriver we control. And then the final card in our main board that I did already talk about a little, Maximum Velocity, which is a 2 for 10 that we can only play if we've boosted 3 or more times this turn, which hopefully we will do, because this is an extremely strong card. Finally, we're going to talk about the rest of our sideboard. Obviously, we already talked about our equipment here, but we need to talk about what we're playing for our other cards. Starting with 2 Backup Protocol Red. This card is really just here for our matchups that are going to try to fatigue us. The same reason as the Cognition Nodes. Cognition Nodes gives a card when it hits, put it on the bottom of our deck, pretty much for an extra resource since we have to put a counter on it. And the Backup Protocol Reds can put a red attack from our discard into our hand. This is perfect to get something like a max velocity back, so we can threaten a double max velocity turn maybe, which can really hurt those fatigue decks trying to slow us down, since now we can just blow them out of the water with an extremely strong damage turn that we can set up, since they're giving us all this time to do so. And then, as I said, the Cognition Node's just another way to stop fatigue. Let's just put more cards back into our deck. Our 3 Tick-Tock Clocks are here just for the Mechanologist matchup. Not so much Tekla-Vesson, since he doesn't play too many items, but Old Dash, New Dash, and Max Mirrors, this card is near essential, since this can blow up Hyperdrivers, this can blow up Boom Grenades, this can blow up Dash IO's backup protocols, this can blow up enemy Tick-Tock Clocks, this can blow up Chambers, Purifiers, any item that our opponent has in play. Really good into those mech mirrors. We have 3 red Rev Up. This card is just here for our Dromai matchup. I wanted to include one more popper, and I thought Rev Up was just the best one. If we control a Hyperdriver, it only costs 2, allowing it to be the exact rate of Throttle, and I would hope we control at least one Hyperdriver. Since, you know, Max makes Hyperdrivers. And then finally, the Construct Nitro Mechanoid is here for any matchup that we think we can get it off. So a matchup like Dromai, their Kylorias are going to be threatening to take our Hyperdrivers, and the Mechanoid probably won't help us win the game, as well as they can take the Mechanoid, because it is an item. So don't do that into Dromai. But a matchup like maybe Bravo, who, yes, they can destroy our equipment, but can't fully disrupt us if they don't find that. We can land the Mechanoid and then use a High Octane to, again, set up one of those big turns. Some slower aggro matchups, Mechanoid will be good against. Nothing like a Fi or Alexi, but Maybe something like a Katsu, someone who's trying to set up their turns a little more. Mechanoid can really shut them down with how much damage it can push through. And really, anything else similar to that, probably those mid-range matchups, I think Mechanoid is good into. The reason it's not in the main board is because there are just a lot of things that it's not good against. As I already said, Dromai, Lexi, Vi, the Wizards, since we're losing our AB to build it. Those types of things. So I don't think it's an every matchup card, like pretty much most of the cards in our main board. But I do think it is something to consider in some matchups, which is why it's here. That's going to be it for the video about Max the Hype Nitro. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that your ProQuest season goes well. I already played in one ProQuest. By the time this video goes up, I took home 4th place. Not getting myself a max, sadly. I got a dash. But I am playing in another one pretty soon, so hopefully I get my max then. Or even win and get a gold foil. So hopefully I do that, but we'll see. I hope you guys had a good day, and I will see you in the next one. I think we'll be taking a look at -IO, and we'll save Tekla Vesson for the end. Goodbye.